There are growing reports of what is referred to as water tanker mafias in a number of provinces, worsening the country's water crisis. These so-called water tanker mafias sabotage the infrastructure so they can sell water to desperate residents. Now, for more on this, I am joined by the Water and Sanitation Director General, Dr. Phillips, as well as Professor Anthony Turton from the Free State University Center of Environmental Management. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me this evening. I'd like to start with you from the department, Dr. Phillips, from the Department of Water and Sanitation. If you could just paint the picture for us. We just heard the Minister of Public Works, Dean McPherson, talking about the construction mafia. We also have heard how the water tanker mafia is now becoming some sort of the cash cow as well for these kinds of people. How widespread is this problem?
Thank you very much and good evening. It's difficult to tell. There are a lot of reports of activities of the water tanker mafia. What we do know for sure is that there's increasing theft of metal parts, particularly in municipal water and sanitation systems. Now, those metal parts can be stolen for various reasons. One of the main reasons will be to sell them for scrap metal. That is probably a large part of the problem. But you're correct in saying that in some instances, current water tanker operators might be deliberately sabotaging the infrastructure, taking out the metal parts, making the infrastructure dysfunctional so that they can get extended contracts to provide water through water tankering rather than the water being provided through the normal distribution system. It's very difficult to tell when you find that your water and sanitation infrastructure has been vandalized and metal parts have been stolen. It's very difficult to tell whether they've been stolen to sell for scrap metal or whether they've been stolen as an act of deliberate sabotage.
Yeah, and if you could come in there, Professor Anthony Turton, you've just heard what Dr. Phillips has had to say. It is difficult for them to be able to tell who's actually behind these infrastructure damages as well. But in the meantime, residents are left to have to pay for what is a basic human right.
Yes, that's certainly the way it is. I would like to support what Dr. Phillips has said there. It is very difficult to ascertain. However, that doesn't mean to say that there should not be a proper forensic investigation, because from my perspective, this matter is getting bigger by the day. And I'd also like to add another dimension to it. It's not only about drinking water, it's actually also about the wastewater systems. I'm aware, for example, of deliberate attempts made to sabotage the wastewater pipes in order to land contracts to pump sewage out of, for example, commercial buildings that are flooded. I know this for a fact, and I'm more than willing to speak to Dr. Phillips about that offline, to get more clarity on that. But that is definitely a factor in certain parts of South Africa. What I've seen from my personal perspective is that where it tends to happen is very often closely associated with known previous attempts at corruption by known political leaders. So there seems to be some kind of a deliberate linkage between these two, and it seems to be a syndicated operation. So it's not universally present all over the country. And in fact, I'm also aware of a wastewater works that was vandalized. It was then refurbished at great cost, and just before it was recommissioned, it was vandalized once again. All the new motors were stripped out, all the cables were stripped out. So these are definitely things that are ongoing, and it's in the entire water sector, not just the drinking water part of it.
Yeah, and Dr. Phillips, I'm sure you'll be more than welcoming to receive that information as well from Dr. Turton. But also to that point, as the department, what do you then do if you're saying it's difficult to be able to tell who's responsible, but surely there are some sort of investigations, mechanisms that are put in place that you can try and prevent this, because what it seems to be happening now is that it's mushrooming. what are you doing about the problem currently?
Well, firstly, we are working closely with the security cluster in government. They are prioritizing this kind of crime, as well as the construction mafia that you talked about earlier in the show. Government has also taken various steps, such as introducing legislation a number of years ago, which resulted in much heavier sentences for crime of theft and damage to essential infrastructure. And we're starting to see some very heavy sentences. For example, there was an article in the media recently about 4 men who were arrested for breaking into a Transnet warehouse. They stole 57,000 Rand worth of electrical equipment and batteries, and they were arrested, and they were each given sentences of 35 years. And we need to see more of that in South Africa. We need, the people who are doing this need to know that if they are caught, they're going to be receive a very heavy sentence from the courts. We also need to work together with the communities, and we would really like to appeal to anyone who has any information to give us that information. We have a toll-free hotline, and you can give the information anonymously. Our toll-free hotline is 0800-20-0200, and that anything reported there will be investigated. We need to get information. Once we get leads, then we can start to ensure that investigations happen. And the information can relate either to officials that people know who are working in water and sanitation departments, who are colluding with organized crime in doing this kind of thing, and also people in communities who have information about other people in the community who've actually stolen parts of public infrastructure. Please let us know. We can investigate, and then we can find out why they have done it and whether they are linked to the alleged water tanker mafia.
I mean, I know you speak from a national government perspective as well. However, from a municipal government perspective, there does seem to be, there are contracts that are awarded to some of these companies that are charging exorbitant fees. So it would be as simple, I'm assuming, as to go to certain municipalities, looking into their books and seeing who's overcharging for some of the water as well in the area. I'd like to give you an example of a report where it was cited that a typical fee for filling a 5,000-litre JoJo tank charged by water mafias ranged between 600 and 800 Rand. Now, for the same purchased water by the municipality, that would cost 40 to 120 Rand, depending on which local municipality it is. So my point there is that if we have companies or organizations that are charging these exorbitant amounts, then shouldn't that be then something where there's smoke, there's fire, that you lead there and investigate those ones?
Yes, I read that article. That was referring to water tankers which are stealing water. This is not, that article was not about water tankers appointed by a municipality. They're water tanker operators who are making illegal connections into the municipal distribution system, stealing the water, in other words, getting it for free, and then selling it to residents at that exorbitant rate. Municipalities are bound by government's procurement regulation and laws to follow processes if they're going to procure the services of water tankers. And we have a very efficient Auditor General in the country which audits all of that expenditure. And if they find that the municipality has just appointed a company at an exorbitant rate without going through a proper procurement process, then the Auditor General does highlight that and report it openly to the public and to Parliament.
Professor Turton, you know, you had quite a bit of information where there are leaks in the system, excuse the pun as well. Do you think with all these efforts that the department is saying it's making as well, also calling on for community members, that this will help prevent this problem, or not prevent it, it's already, the horse is already bolted, but this will help to curb this problem at the very least?
Well, yes, and look, certainly Dr. Phillips himself has led a tremendous initiative within the department to clean up the department. That's a matter of public record. You must also appreciate that the department doesn't actually have the the right to go and interfere at municipal level because of the constitutional limitations to that activity. However, the Auditor General is very active. I'm aware that that they've got very, very aggressive audits underway in different parts of the country, and I do speak with them, on a regular basis. So I think from central government side there is a lot of effort being made, but it's a difficult nut to crack. It's not a simple, easy thing to do, and I think we just have to really beef up on our prosecutions. People must actually be taken to court and must be correctly prosecuted. And I think the other important thing that Dr. Phillips has just said that I'd like to fully endorse, we need to get responsible local community leaders to come forward. These people know what's going on inside their communities, and in particular faith-based organizations. There are a number of highly credible faith-based organizations embedded in communities, and I think they could become very powerful allies in this battle against corruption, because ultimately the ordinary citizens will pay for the unintended consequences of this corruption.
Yeah, and Dr. Phillips as well, it becomes a very big challenge as well when they are stealing municipal water to go and sell it to communities as well. Have you heard of any reports of intimidation to residents to force them to buy this water as opposed to going for the municipal water, or would they have already damaged that infrastructure?
Well, unfortunately, we have an environment in many municipalities where the municipal water supply is unreliable, or where the water isn't of an adequate quality to drink. So, for example, in Hammanskraal, outside Pretoria at the moment, you can't drink the water coming out the tap. The city of Tshwane has warned the people not to drink the water because the water treatment works isn't able to treat the water to drinking water standards. And the municipality there has had to resort to providing people with drinking water from tankers. In other parts of the country, municipal water services have declined, so the water coming out of the tap is not reliable, and people have to get water from another source. So they're often forced to go and buy water from water sellers because the water service provided by the municipality is unreliable.
Yeah, and I mean, Dr. Phillips, it is been the case, particularly in Hammanskraal that you're mentioning as well, that the residents there have had to rely on water tankers. We also saw that devastating cholera outbreak that took place last year as well. As a department as well, for areas like Hammanskraal and areas where the drinking water isn't of good quality, what is the short term besides the water tankers, or is it only the water tankers?
For the municipality to provide people with clean drinking water when their normal water treatment infrastructure is dysfunctional, or for some other reason there's a disruption in water supply, water tankers are the most cost-effective option to distribute water to communities. But our policy is that should not be the norm. And in fact, we're working with the city of Tshwane to, as rapidly as possible, put in place an existing water treatment capacity so we can get clean drinking water back into their water distribution system so they can stop using water tankers. But our policy is that it should not be the norm. The use of water tankers should only be in emergencies and should always only be a temporary measure.
And on that Hammanskraal matter as well, you're saying there are measures in place as well. You are working with that area too. Do you have any time frames when residents there can also enjoy opening a tap and getting a glass of water or brushing their teeth without having to buy that water?
Yes, we're using our water port, Magalies Water, which we've entered into an agreement between them and the city of Tshwane. Magalies Water is urgently constructing what's called a package plant. An additional water treatment plant which can be constructed quickly, which is manufactured off-site. And they're putting it at their water treatment works near Hammanskraal. And the agreement is that Tshwane will then buy water from that package plant of Magalies Water while it's still busy trying to address the problems that it has with the Rooiwal wastewater treatment works and the September water treatment works, which are causing the problems with water supply in Hammanskraal. So the first unit, we were there last week with the minister. The construction work is fully underway. It's a big construction site. The first unit will be supplying water to Hammanskraal into their distribution system by October, and then another 3 units will supply more water into other parts of Hammanskraal every 3 months for another 9 months after that.
Well, thank you so much for your time, to both of you, for sharing your insights and just clarifying some of those things for us this evening.